Today, I'm going to be breaking down the Demi Method in 3 easy to follow steps. Step 1 is toning, which basically means you're evening out and balancing the skin. Step 2 is decorating, which is basically adding contour, adding color back into the skin. And step 3, probably the part that people are the most intrigued by, is the filtering out of excess colors, or the color correcting part. I have a fresh face. This is what I look like without makeup. I'm gonna go into the Demi palettes. A lot of what's distracting on our face is actually kind of the splotchy, uneven color. Because if you look at my face, you can see how I have multiple tones. Like, it's not just one flat, solid color. Darkness here, lightness around here, some darkness here, some vibrancy out here. Toning is gonna help to basically even that out. It'll help to add some color in the areas that are missing color and tone down the areas that have too much color. I like to go in with a shade like this. This is called 05 or Orange 5. We're going to take a fluffy brush like this, not too big, not too small. And I'm going to start off first by toning down the darker areas. Women of color usually have a lot of darkness around the mouth. So this is going to help to tone that area down completely and just help give a more natural finish to the face. We're gonna go ahead and add some color in those areas that are missing it. So like right around here, you can see that this is like a little bit of a light spot, and that lightness actually makes the darkness that's next to it look that much more distracting because it's contrasting so much. When you tone down how light these spots are around here, it's gonna actually help the skin look a lot more fresh, make the dark areas not look as dark, and add a little tiny bit of some of that toning shade right in here. You can also go in with a bronzer like shade if you're needing a little bit more warmth and depth. Maybe it's a super light spot. As a woman of color, I don't really have that issue too often, so I like to go in usually with that 05 shade, and then I'm gonna use that same 05 shade just to tone around my jawline. As you can see right here, I do not have much color going on just in this little area here, and that is pretty normal because the sun doesn't really see the sides of my face as much as it sees the front of my face. So just adding color in that area is going to add so much more depth and evenness, and you can already see the difference between the side that's not toned versus the side that is toned. A little tiny bit on my forehead too, just to go ahead and again even out my skin tone and just give us a more even color. And start adding some color back into our skin. This part is called decorating too. It's basically going to be the contouring, bronzing, and blush aspect of it. I like to do all of this before I actually filter out any of the distractions on our face. Start off first with this bronzy contoury shade because I like to add some nice warmth to my skin. So I am just going to stamp this only in the area where I would want contour. You can see I have a natural contour line right there. So I'm basically just playing off of that. And if you want to make it a little bit more deeper, you totally can, and add a little bit of this shade here, which is an N neutral blue green. It's just going to add a little subtle bit of contour to the face and shadows. And do the same thing on our forehead. I'm just going to add a little tiny bit of that bronzy shade. It's called NR, and that stands for neutral red, and we're just going to stamp that on our forehead. The part that I think people get the most overwhelmed with is the nose contouring. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start off first with that neutral red shade, and I'm gonna do kind of something similar to what we were doing on the rest of our face when we were toning. And we're basically just gonna hit the lightest spots because, as you can see, I do have some warmth naturally to my nose. So I am just basically playing off of that and just creating balance. So instead of me trying to completely erase this, I'm going to add color to the areas that are looking kind of splotchy to make it look a little bit more even. That actually gives a more youthful appearance to the skin than me going in and trying to make that a lot lighter, which was something that I would do a lot because, you know, makeup trends and all that stuff, but it wasn't really what was balancing my face and like actually looking as flattering on my face. If anything, it was making me look kind of fake. I like to take a little bit of that NBG, and I do like to play on the fact that I have a little bit of a shadow here, but it's kind of crooked. So I'm just using this smaller brush to just go ahead and add that shadow. So I'm not adding it to the area that already has that line. I'm just adding it to the areas that don't, to make it look a little bit more symmetrical. Once you get the hang of it, it is pretty easy because you'll be doing almost the same thing every day on your face and just creating some of that balance. When you're first learning this method, give yourself some time so that you can really play with it. And I also like to just play on the fact that I have some natural shadows underneath my eye here. So I'm gonna balance that out, add a little bit of color to my eyelid as well, basically working with the God-given eyeshadow that we naturally have on our eyelid, which I used to hate, but since doing the Demi Method, I have learned to love, because once you kind of perfect little things, it actually makes it look really, really good. At this point, I'm gonna add some blush. So I like to sometimes mix my own and use this red and this orange to create a really pretty natural like peachy shade for my skin tone. I'm going to actually place the blush right here in the front of my cheek. And the reason why I'm placing it mostly here and then blending back is because whenever I get hot, whenever I get flushed, if I'm like embarrassed, whatever, like this is where I naturally get redness. What area is it that you naturally get a little bit more flushed? Already starting to look so much more put together. And what I do a lot too is I'll just kind of look at myself and be like, do I need more? Do I need anything else before I start filtering out? And even after I filter out, sometimes I'll add a little bit more too. We're gonna go ahead and filter out. So I think this is the part that everybody gets the most overwhelmed by, the part that everybody always so stressed out by, because they're like, I don't know what colors I'm supposed to use. Well, I got you. But if you're needing a match, you can check out the description down below. When I turn my face, especially, I have a lot of darkness right in here because this is where my skin is very thin. I'm gonna go in to this shade here called 03. It comes to figuring out like what colors you're going to use. You want to know the properties of what color look like on your skin, because on my face, none of these colors actually look like this on my face, because my face has color to it. It's naturally pigmented, it's naturally brown. So blue on my skin looks different than blue on this white piece of paper right here. Property of blue is always going to be dark and deep, and there's no other underlying pigment. If you look right in here, you see how that just looks very, very dark. It doesn't really look violet, it doesn't really look brown, it just looks dark. Green is gonna be usually more on the brown side. Usually sunspots, melasma, freckles tend to have excess green in them. People think that they have redness on their face, when in reality, that saturation, it's like a dark red. Dark red lets you know there's excess violet, and it probably has some blue in there. You have me to help guide you, and I'll even create a little chart for you that will help you as well. Start off first by picking up a little bit of the orange. And when it comes to this, we're picking up a very little bit. Like, we'll see it on the brush, but there's barely anything there. And all we're gonna do is only tap into the darkest spots. So I am not smothering this. I'm not smearing it on my face. I am just tapping it in that very, very dark spot right there. I always start in the inner corner of the eye because I feel like this is where a lot of people have a lot of shadows because of our bone structure. And this is also where our veins are. So I just like to filter that out so that it's not so intense and bright. But look at the difference between just that littlest, tiniest bit and this side here. Do you see how that side looks really, really dark and here we look a little bit brighter? It instantly makes such a big difference when you just hit just the most distracting areas. Taking that same orange, it is a level 3, and the reason why I chose the level 3 is because on my skin, personally, I don't have any darkness that is the same like tone as my skin, or same level as my skin, I should say. Most of it is just like a little bit darker than my skin tone, but it's not like crazy dark. If you have super, super dark circles or super, super dark spots, that's when we're going to go up the saturation levels. If I took 01, which is an orange level 1, and put that on my my dark spot right here, it would actually turn kind of whitish, and that lets me know that it is a little bit too light. If it starts turning kind of reddish or orangey, that lets me know that it is too high of a saturation, so you want to go a little lower. Sometimes when my circles get really bad, I'll mix these two together and it is just like the most perfect concoction. As you can see, if I do this, you can see how it looks kind of like a dark purple. So that lets me know that it is a violet, but there's a little bit of blue. There's more blue than violet. So I'm going to use OY1, an orange yellow one. It's kind of like a neon shade, and I'm only going to again hit the most distracting spot. So I'm actually not smearing it completely here. It's just right in here in this inner corner. Look at that. How much better it's starting to look. This area here, this also looks like a darker violet shade. So I'm just gonna take that same orange yellow shade. And again, if this starts turning kind of like orangey, it lets me know that maybe I should use a yellow orangey shade because there's more violet in it than orange. But you can see how that literally just blended into my skin and neutralized. I'm gonna do this where I turn my head down so that I can see this area here, because this is what a lot of people struggle with, are the under eye bags. This is a red orange, and we're gonna go ahead and just hit only these spots right here, and we're gonna just filter out those brown spots, because you can see how they're like a little bit more brown, like a darker brown. And since they're kind of darker brown, that lets me know there's probably some blue in there. Always turn my face a few different ways so that I can see what it's doing. But look at that. And then we have just this little bit left. So I'm gonna go ahead, use that same red orange. And then we're gonna go ahead and take a little bit of some bronzer. And the only reason I'm doing that is because, as you can see, I've made this a little bit too light. So this is going to balance that out so that it doesn't look like I have a white spot there. I didn't filter out this area here. So as you can see, it's a little bit more saturated. It looks kind of like a reddish, but it's like kind of like a darker red. So it lets me know that there's probably a yellow blue. We're just gonna hit these spots right here. And that's just fixing that little outer corner so that it doesn't look like this is going far, like too far down. You know what I mean? Look at that. I'll usually like hit a little bit of that bronzy contouring shade just around here if I find that maybe it's looking a little too bright, or maybe it's just not looking natural and blended, because you want it to look very seamless. You want it to just like kind of flow into each other, have like a stark bright under eye like we're used to. The difference between this side here and this side here. Of course, it would get all dark and gloomy when I'm finishing up, but this is what our face is looking like, and we just look like us. It looks very natural, but what's missing is my lips. I have no color on my lips right now, so I'm just going to take a little bit of the sculpting shade, and all I'm going to do is just add a little bit of color to my natural lip line to go ahead and give me a nice even lip color. Fix this line here. And then I'm gonna just add a little bit of color to my lip because I don't really have much color going on. So I'm using that like red from earlier and just going to hit the areas that have less color. And then on my top lip, because I have some darkness right here, I'm gonna actually start off with a little bit of the orange just on the darkest areas. And I'm using a very small bit so that it's more of a stain versus like a lipstick. And then I'm just gonna add some red right there to the center eyelet. And then we're gonna take a little bit of the gloss, because my lips are drier than the Saharan desert right now, and just go right on top of that to give me a fresh little pout. And then I like to finish off with a little bit of the balm just at the highest point of my cheek, because that gives like that ultimate like clean girl aesthetic. Finish with a little bit of an eyelash curling moment right here. Do we see the difference in our skin? In case if you forgot what we looked like before. I mean, look at this before and after. It's like day and night difference. The most about this method is the way that my skin just looks like skin and I look like myself. And because I look like myself, I feel super confident in every single picture that I take, and just my day-to-day, and knowing that my skin is the star of the show and not my makeup. If you're wanting to try out this method right here, all you have to do is check out the description down below, and I would love to help. Follow for more Demi Method videos like this.